The weight of one small light. The first snow of the season fell heavier than expected. It coated the city streets in silence, muffling the honks of cars and softening the edges of the world. On a dim corner in downtown Cleveland, a man named Thomas sat slouched on the cold steps of an abandoned building, his breath visible in the frozen air. His coat was torn at the sleeve, his shoes damp, and in his eyes there flickered the dull weariness of someone who had been waiting too long for life to change. People passed him in steady streams, bundled tight against the wind, eyes lowered, steps quickened as if kindness were something too costly to spare. Thomas hadn't always been invisible. There was a time, not too long ago, when his laugh had filled a warm kitchen, when he had a daughter who thought the world of him, when his name meant something in the small construction crew he led. But a series of small misfortunes. An injury at work, medical bills that swallowed savings, his wife's sudden illness, cascaded into something bigger than he could control. He lost his job. Then his apartment. Then, finally, the fragile web of family and friendships unraveled. People stopped calling back. He told himself it was temporary, just a season, but the season had stretched into 2 long years. Tonight, as the snow thickened, Thomas hugged his arms around himself and thought of giving up. He had resisted that thought for so long, clinging stubbornly to hope, but hope is heavy when it never seems to deliver. He imagined closing his eyes and simply not waking up. The idea almost felt like mercy. But then, through the snow, he noticed a girl across the street. She couldn't have been more than 12, tugging at her mother's hand as they hurried along the sidewalk. The girl's scarf was bright red, a splash of color in the gray-white haze. As they passed, she looked straight at him. Not over him. Not around him. At him. Their eyes locked, just for a heartbeat, and in that gaze Thomas felt something he had forgotten existed, recognition. A human acknowledgement that said, "I see you." The girl whispered something to her mother, who shook her head and tried to pull her along, but the girl stopped. She rummaged in her bag, then darted across the street before her mother could stop her. She reached Thomas, cheeks flushed from the cold, and pressed something into his hand. It was a granola bar, still wrapped, slightly crushed from being carried around. "It's my favorite kind," she said shyly, her breath coming in puffs. "I want you to have it." Thomas stared at the small offering. His throat tightened in a way he couldn't control. He wanted to say something, "Thank you," or "No, keep it," but all he could manage was a choked nod. The girl smiled, quick and brilliant, then ran back to her mother, who gave Thomas a long, unreadable look before guiding her daughter away. The granola bar sat in his palm like a sacred object. It wasn't the food that mattered, it was the gesture, the audacity of a child's kindness in a world where most adults looked away. And in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't salvation, not yet, but it was a spark. The kind of spark that could, maybe, keep a man alive one more night. That night, Thomas found himself replaying the moment over and over as he huddled beneath the overhang of the abandoned building. He thought of the girl's eyes, so unafraid, so willing. And he remembered his own daughter, years ago, when she used to bring him little gifts from school, proud to share whatever she had. That memory ached, but it also lit a fragile warmth inside him. He realized that if one child could see him, maybe others could too. Maybe he wasn't as invisible as he believed. By morning, Thomas made a decision. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even fully rational. He decided he would give, too. He had nothing, but maybe nothing was enough if given honestly. He spent the day gathering stray litter from the sidewalks and stacking it neatly into bins. He held doors open for strangers. He used what little voice he had left to say, "Good morning," to passers-by, whether or not they answered. Most didn't. Some frowned. But a few smiled back, and each one felt like a stone removed from his chest. Days turned into weeks. Thomas became a small fixture on that corner, not just the man slumped against the steps, but the man who offered directions to lost tourists, who complimented someone's scarf, who helped a delivery driver lift a heavy box. Slowly, the city began to notice. A local coffee shop owner left a steaming cup for him some mornings. A college student dropped off her old coat, still warm and lined. And then, one late afternoon, a familiar red scarf appeared in the crowd. It was the girl. She ran up, older somehow even though only a few weeks had passed. Her mother lingered nearby, softer this time, no longer pulling her away. The girl handed Thomas a paper bag. Inside was a sandwich, neatly wrapped, with a note scrawled in uneven handwriting, "You matter." Thomas's eyes filled before he could stop them. He looked at the girl and whispered, "Thank you." It was all he had, but he said it with a depth that made the girl beam. Her mother approached, hesitant, then extended her hand. "I'm Claire," she said. "This is my daughter, Emily." That was the beginning. Claire didn't have much herself. She was a nurse working long shifts, raising Emily on her own, but she began checking in on Thomas, sometimes with food, sometimes with conversation. And Thomas, in turn, found himself wanting to rise higher, to honor the faith this small family showed him. He started visiting a local shelter, not just for a bed but to ask about work programs. When they asked what skills he had, he told them about construction. Soon, he was volunteering to help with small repair projects at the shelter, fixing a leaky faucet, patching a wall. The staff noticed. One of them connected him to a contractor looking for part-time help. The first time Thomas received an honest paycheck in years, he stared at it as if it were a miracle. It wasn't much, but it was real, and it was his. He used part of it to buy Emily a new pack of granola bars, the same kind she had given him that snowy night. When he handed them to her, she laughed and hugged him tightly. Claire stood by, eyes wet, whispering, "I'm glad you didn't give up." Months passed. Winter melted into spring. Thomas moved into transitional housing, then into a small apartment of his own. He called his daughter, now in college, and for the first time in years, she answered. Their conversation was cautious, tentative, but it was a start. Looking back, Thomas realized that his life had not been rebuilt by a shelter, or a paycheck, or even by his own determination. It had been rebuilt by a granola bar. By the courage of a child who refused to look away. That single act of kindness had set off a chain reaction, each small gesture igniting the next, until despair gave way to possibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the city skyline, Thomas found himself standing on the same street corner where everything had begun. He carried a bag with sandwiches inside, handing them out to others who now sat on the cold steps, faces tired, eyes dim. He told them, "I know what it feels like. And I know it can change. Don't stop believing that." Some listened. Some didn't. But Thomas understood. Sometimes all it takes is one person, one moment, one small light, to make the darkness bearable. And so the story of Thomas is not really about one man climbing out of hardship. It is about the way kindness multiplies when it is given freely. A granola bar became hope. Hope became effort. Effort became renewal. And renewal became the chance to give again. The truth is, most of us will never know how much difference our smallest actions might make. We might never see the full ripple of a smile, a word, a gesture. But somewhere, someone might be holding on to life because of it. So the next time you pass a stranger in need, remember Thomas. Remember Emily and her red scarf. Remember that humanity's greatest power is not wealth, or status, or control, it is the courage to care. And sometimes, the weight of one small light is enough to guide someone home.